My husband of 5 years was living a triple life with 3 wives and 3 kids in different cities. We all teamed up for revenge. I, 28F, discovered that my husband Robert, 30M, has been hiding another family from me. We've been married for 5 years and together for 8. I'm still trying to process this information and figure out what to do next. I met Robert when we were both working at a tech startup in Seattle. I had just moved to the city after college, not knowing anyone. The startup was my first real job and I was nervous about fitting in. Robert was one of the first people to welcome me. He showed me around the office, introduced me to everyone, and even invited me to lunch with his work friends that first week. Robert stood out from the start. He was charming, funny, and seemed genuinely interested in getting to know me. We quickly became work friends, grabbing coffee together during breaks and chatting about our lives outside of work. I learned that Robert grew up in Seattle and still had lots of family and friends in the area. I envied his strong roots, as I was still feeling a bit lost and lonely in the new city. After a few months of friendship, Robert asked me out on a date. I was hesitant at first about dating a coworker, but he was so sweet and persistent that I agreed. Our first date was perfect, dinner at a cute Italian restaurant followed by a walk along the waterfront. We talked for hours and I felt like I had known him for years. Things moved quickly after that. We became official within a few weeks and were practically inseparable. Robert introduced me to his friends and family, who all welcomed me warmly. For the first time since moving to Seattle, I felt like I truly belonged. A year into our relationship, Robert suggested we move in together. I was a bit nervous about taking such a big step, but it felt right. We found a cute apartment and spent weekends decorating it together and imagining our future. Just 6 months later, Robert proposed during a weekend getaway to the San Juan Islands. I was over the moon and said yes immediately. We got married in a beautiful ceremony surrounded by friends and family. Robert's large extended family all came, and my smaller family flew in from across the country. It was a perfect day and I felt so lucky to have found my person. The first few years of marriage were great. We both focused on our careers, taking on more responsibility at the startup. We traveled when we could, exploring the Pacific Northwest and taking a few international trips. We talked about having kids someday, but agreed to wait a few years to establish our careers first. About 3 years ago, Robert started traveling more for work. He said the company was expanding to new markets and he needed to oversee things in person. The trips were usually just for 2 to 3 days every couple weeks. I was a bit sad about him being away more, but I understood it was important for his career. He would always call or text regularly when he was gone. I threw myself into my own work and hobbies while he was traveling. I took some cooking classes, joined a book club, and started training for a half marathon. It was nice to have my own things going on, but I always looked forward to Robert coming home. Last week, I decided to surprise Robert on one of his work trips. He was supposed to be in Chicago for 3 days, so I took a day off work and flew there to meet him. I thought it would be romantic to show up at his hotel and spend the evening together. When I got to the hotel, I asked the front desk for Robert's room number. The clerk seemed confused and said there was no Robert, last name checked in. I insisted he must be there and showed my ID proving I was his wife. The clerk looked uncomfortable and said he couldn't give me any information. I was worried something had happened to Robert. I called his cell but it went straight to voicemail. I texted asking where he was staying, but got no response. I decided to wait in the lobby to see if he showed up. After about an hour, I saw Robert walk in with a woman and young boy, maybe 4 to 5 years old. They were laughing and the boy was holding Robert's hand. I couldn't believe my eyes. Robert saw me and his face went pale. He quickly ushered the woman and boy towards the elevator. I confronted him and demanded to know what was going on. He tried to brush me off, saying it wasn't what it looked like. But the woman looked shocked and asked who I was. When I said I was Robert's wife, she got angry and said that was impossible because she was his wife. It all came pouring out then. The woman, Sarah, said she and Robert had been married for 6 years and that was their son, James. Robert had told her he traveled frequently for work, which is when he would come see me. He had been living a double life this whole time. I couldn't process what I was hearing. I started yelling at Robert, calling him every name I could think of. Hotel security came and asked us to leave. Sarah took James up to their room while Robert and I went outside to talk. Robert tried to explain, saying he never meant for it to happen like this. He said he met Sarah in college and they got married young. But then he met me a year later and fell in love. He couldn't bring himself to leave Sarah, especially once she got pregnant. So he decided to try to have both families? I asked how he managed it financially and logistically. He admitted he had a secret bank account and credit cards I didn't know about. He would tell each of us he was traveling for work when he was with the other family. I left the hotel and flew home that night. I haven't spoken to Robert since, other than a few texts telling him not to come home. I'm staying with my sister right now trying to figure out what to do. I'm angry and confused. I feel like my whole marriage was a lie. I don't know how Robert could do this to me, to Sarah, to James. I'm planning to file for divorce, but I'm scared about the future. Robert was my whole world and now that's shattered. I've only told my sister and best friend so far. I'm dreading having to explain this to our families and friends. I'm embarrassed and feel like such a fool for not realizing something was going on. I keep replaying our relationship in my head, looking for signs I missed. Were there red flags I ignored? How could I not know my husband had a whole other family? I feel like I don't even know who Robert really is anymore. I'm not sure what to do next. I know I need to talk to a lawyer about divorce. But beyond that, I feel lost. My whole future I had planned is gone. I'm angry at Robert but also sad. Part of me wishes I could just forget what I saw and go back to how things were. But I know that's impossible now. I'm struggling to understand how Robert could maintain this deception for so long. We shared everything, or so I thought. We had joint bank accounts, shared calendars, knew each other's phone passwords. How did he hide a whole other life? I'm also grappling with the realization that my entire relationship with Robert was built on lies. Did he ever really love me? Was anything real? I thought we had something special, but now I wonder if I was just convenient for him. I'm worried about my financial situation now too. We had shared accounts and I'm not sure what my rights are in terms of our assets. I'm scared Robert might try to hide money or property during the divorce. I'm dreading having to see Robert again to deal with practical matters like separating our belongings. The thought of facing him makes me feel sick. I don't know how I'll react when I see him. Part of me wants to reach out to Sarah to compare notes, but another part feels like that would just cause more pain. I'm curious about her side of the story though. Did she ever suspect anything? How is she coping with this revelation? I'm struggling with feelings of inadequacy too. Was I not enough for Robert? What does Sarah have that I don't? I know logically that this isn't about me, but it's hard not to take it personally. I'm scared about being alone. Robert was my main support system in Seattle. Most of our friends were originally his friends. I'm worried I'll end up isolated and alone after the divorce. I guess I'm looking for advice on how to move forward. Has anyone else been through something like this? How do you rebuild your life after such a huge betrayal? Should I try to contact Sarah or just leave that alone? I'm overwhelmed and don't know where to start. Thanks for reading this long post. Writing it all out has helped me process things a bit. Any words of wisdom or support would be appreciated as I try to figure out my next steps. Update 1. Thank you all for the supportive comments on my original post. I really appreciate the kind words and advice as I navigate this awful situation. I wanted to give an update on what's happened in the last couple weeks. I met with a divorce lawyer and started the process of filing papers. Robert has been begging me to reconsider and give him another chance. He keeps saying he'll leave Sarah and that I'm the one he really loves. But I told him that ship has sailed. I could never trust him again after this level of betrayal. The day after I saw my lawyer, I got a shocking phone call from Sarah. Apparently Robert had come clean to her about everything after I left that day at the hotel. She was understandably furious and kicked him out. She wanted to talk to me to compare notes and see how long we had both been deceived. Sarah and I ended up meeting for coffee. It was surreal and awkward at first, but we actually ended up talking for hours. She's really nice and we have a lot in common, which I guess makes sense given we both fell for the same guy. We pieced together the timeline of Robert's double life. He and Sarah got married right out of college, about 7 years ago. A year later is when he met me at work. Instead of choosing between us, he decided to try juggling both relationships. When Sarah got pregnant 5 years ago, Robert panicked but still couldn't bring himself to leave either of us. So he came up with elaborate excuses and lies to maintain both families. Sarah and I were both horrified at the extent of Robert's deception. He had separate phones, email accounts, even a secret apartment he would stay at sometimes to make it seem like he was traveling. He had been siphoning money from his company into secret accounts to fund it all. The craziest part is that Sarah and I realized we had actually met once before, about 3 years ago. We were both at a work conference for our respective jobs. Robert was also there and introduced us as co-workers. We even had dinner together one night. I remember thinking Sarah seemed familiar when I saw her at the hotel, but I couldn't place why until we talked it through. Sarah and I have decided to team up as we go through our respective divorce proceedings. We're using the same lawyer and sharing information to make sure Robert can't hide any assets. It's been oddly cathartic to bond with her over this shared trauma. The one silver lining in all this is that I've made a new friend in Sarah. We've been talking and texting regularly to support each other. It helps to have someone who truly understands what I'm going through. We're planning to start a support group for others who have been cheated on in similarly extreme ways. As for Robert, he's been desperately trying to salvage things with both of us. He even suggested we try some sort of polyamorous arrangement where he stays with both families. Sarah and I shut that down real quick. He's living in a hotel now, and both of our lawyers have told him to stop contacting us except through official channels. I'm still angry and sad, but working with Sarah has given me new resolve. We're determined to make Robert face consequences for his actions. His company found out about his financial fraud and fired him. And we're pushing for the maximum possible division of assets in the divorce. I've started telling friends and family what happened. Most have been supportive, though a few have questioned how I could not have known. That stings, but I'm trying not to blame myself. Robert was just really good at lying and compartmentalizing his life. One unexpected development is that Robert's parents reached out to me. They apologized profusely and said they had no idea about his double life. Apparently Robert had told them Sarah and James died in a car accident years ago. They've been wonderful and supportive, offering to help me in any way they can. It's a small comfort to know I'm not losing my entire support system. I've been going through our apartment, packing up Robert's things and deciding what to keep or get rid of. It's been emotional seeing all the reminders of our life together. I'm donating a lot of it because I don't want those memories around. I'm taking things one day at a time. Some days are better than others. I still have moments where I break down crying. But I'm slowly starting to imagine a future without Robert. I'm focusing on self-care, spending time with friends, and throwing myself into work. I've also started therapy to work through all of this. It's helping me process my emotions and start to rebuild my sense of self. My therapist suggested I start journaling, which has been really cathartic. Financially, things are a mess. Robert drained our joint accounts before I could freeze them. My lawyer is working on tracking down all his hidden assets. It's going to be a long process, but I'm determined to get what I'm owed. I'm still struggling with trust issues. I find myself second-guessing everyone and everything. My friends have been patient, but I know it's frustrating for them when I constantly question their motives or honesty. I'm not ready to even think about dating again. The thought of being vulnerable with someone terrifies me. But I'm trying to stay open to the possibility that there are good, honest people out there. Work has been a good distraction. My boss has been understanding and flexible as I deal with all the legal and emotional fallout. I'm grateful to have that stability in my life right now. Thank you again for all the support. I'll post another update once the divorce is finalized and share any new developments. Hopefully the next chapter of my life will be much happier and more honest than the last one. Update 2. It's been a wild few months since my last update. The divorce proceedings are still ongoing, but a lot has happened that I wanted to share. The biggest bombshell is that we discovered Robert has a third family in another state. Sarah and I were contacted by a woman named Jessica who saw a social media post about our situation. She recognized Robert and reached out because she's been married to him for 4 years and they have twin 2-year-olds together. We were all floored. Just when we thought Robert couldn't sink any lower, he manages to surprise us. Jessica flew out to meet Sarah and me. The three of us spent a weekend together processing this new information and supporting each other. It's surreal to think that less than 6 months ago, none of us knew about each other. Now we're bonded for life by this shared trauma. With Jessica's new information, we've had to restart a lot of the divorce proceedings. Our lawyer is now pushing for Robert to be charged with bigamy. We're also working with forensic accountants to track down all of Robert's hidden assets and accounts. It seems he was embezzling even more money than we initially thought to fund his triple life. Robert has essentially gone into hiding. He's not showing up for court dates and his lawyer says he has no contact with him. Part of me wonders if he has even more secret families out there that he's run off to. At this point, nothing would surprise me. The three of us wives have become a united front. We do weekly video chats to check in and support each other. We're even writing a book together about our experiences. A few TV producers have reached out about potentially turning our story into a series or movie. I've been in therapy to work through all of this. It's helping, but I still have trust issues. I'm not sure when I'll be ready to date again. The thought of being vulnerable with someone terrifies me now. But I'm trying to stay optimistic that the right person is out there somewhere. Work has been a good distraction. I got a promotion last month and I'm putting all my energy into that. I've also started volunteering at a domestic violence shelter. Helping other women rebuild their lives after leaving bad situations has been really fulfilling. I'm still angry at Robert, but I'm working on letting go of that anger. It's not serving me anymore. I'm trying to focus on gratitude for the good things in my life and the bullet I dodged by finding out about his deception before we had kids. One positive development is that I've reconnected with some old friends from college. After hearing about my situation, they reached out to offer support. It's been nice to rebuild those connections and remember who I was before Robert came into my life. I've also been exploring new hobbies and interests. I joined a local hiking group and have been spending weekends exploring the beautiful trails around Seattle. It's been therapeutic to get out in nature and challenge myself physically. Financially, things are still messy. We're still in the process of untangling all of Robert's accounts and assets. It's frustrating how long everything takes in the legal system. But I'm trying to be patient and trust that justice will be served eventually. I've had to move to a smaller apartment since I can't afford our old place on my own. It was hard downsizing and letting go of things, but it's also been freeing in a way. I'm embracing a simpler lifestyle and focusing on what really matters. My relationship with Robert's family is complicated. They've been supportive of me, but I know they're struggling to reconcile the son they thought they knew with the man who did all this. I'm trying to maintain boundaries while still being compassionate to their pain. Sarah, Jessica, and I are considering starting a nonprofit to help other victims of complex infidelity and fraud. We want to provide resources and support that we wish we had when we first discovered Robert's deception. It's still in the early planning stages, but it feels good to be working towards something positive. I've started seeing a financial advisor to help me plan for my future. It's scary to think about rebuilding my finances from scratch, but I'm determined to come out of this stronger and more financially savvy than before. The support from friends, family, and internet strangers has meant so much to me through all of this. Thank you to everyone who has reached out with kind words. I'll post another update once the divorce is finally settled. Hopefully that will be the end of this chapter and the start of a much better one. Update 3. It's hard to believe it's been a year since my world imploded. So much has changed, mostly for the better. I wanted to give one final update now that everything has been resolved legally. The divorce was finalized 3 months ago. Robert ended up pleading guilty to multiple counts of fraud and bigamy. He's serving a 5-year prison sentence. The courts divided up his assets between me, Sarah, Jessica, and the kids. It's not a fortune, but it's enough for a fresh start. Sarah, Jessica, and I have stayed close through all of this. We joke that we're sister wives now, just without the husband. We've all moved to the same city and see each other regularly. Our kids are growing up together like cousins. It's not the family any of us imagined, but it works. Our book came out last month and hit the bestseller list. We're donating a portion of the proceeds to organizations that help women leave abusive relationships. A streaming service optioned the rights to our story, so that's in development now. I've started dating again, very cautiously. I'm seeing a nice guy I met through work. He knows my whole story and has been incredibly patient and understanding as I work through my trust issues. It's early days, but I'm cautiously optimistic. Work is going great. I was headhunted for a VP position at a competing company and took the job. The change of scenery has been good for me. I'm also still volunteering and recently joined the board of the Domestic Violence Shelter. Our nonprofit is up and running now. We've been able to help several women in situations similar to ours. It's incredibly rewarding to be able to turn our negative experience into something positive for others. I've made peace with Robert's family. We still keep in touch, and they've been supportive of my new relationship. It's nice to have maintained that connection despite everything that happened. Financially, I'm in a much better place now. Between the divorce settlement, my new job, and some smart investments, I'm feeling secure for the first time in a long time. I even bought my own house recently. I still have moments where the anger and pain of Robert's betrayal hit me. But those moments are fewer and further between now. Mostly, I just feel grateful. Grateful that I found out when I did. Grateful for the amazing women I've met through this ordeal. Grateful for the chance to start over. My therapist says I've made incredible progress over the past year. I'm still working on my trust issues, but I'm much more open and vulnerable than I was even a few months ago. It's a continuous process, but I'm committed to healing. To anyone going through something similar, it gets better. Focus on yourself. Surround yourself with support. Take it one day at a time. You're stronger than you know. This will be my last update on this saga. Thank you all for following along and for the incredible support.